Here's a truth most men don't realize. When you simply disappear, a lot goes on in a woman's mind, and it's far more powerful than any words you could say. Disappearing isn't about playing games. It's about creating space, testing boundaries, and letting her realize what she actually feels about you. The moment you step back, even silently, a woman starts noticing things she never did before. She starts questioning her assumptions, her behavior, and how much she actually values you. It's fascinating because we live in a world where most men over-explain, over-apologize, or over-invest in order to keep attention. That constant presence creates comfort, but it also creates predictability, and predictability kills curiosity. When you vanish, you shake that comfort, you break the pattern, and that's when her mind starts running. She notices the little things she took for granted, the way you made her feel, the energy you brought, and even the absence of conflict when you were around. Suddenly, the emotional weight of your presence becomes clear, and her mind starts to replay interactions, analyze conversations, and imagine what life would be like if you weren't there at all. I'm going to explain exactly what women think, feel, and experience when a man disappears. I'll show you why silence, space, and absence can create more influence than any argument, text, or gesture ever could. By the end of this, you'll understand why walking away strategically isn't mean. It's effective. You'll see why a woman's thoughts about you become sharper, more detailed, and sometimes more obsessive when you don't make yourself available. If you've ever wondered what really goes on in a woman's head when you pull back, pay attention. What I'm about to share will change the way you think about presence, absence, and the subtle power dynamics that drive attraction. 1. How absence makes us notice what we took for granted. Let me be honest with you. When a man disappears, even for a short time, a woman starts noticing things she never appreciated before. It's not about manipulation. It's about perspective. I remember a situation with a man I was casually seeing. He suddenly stopped texting as much, didn't initiate plans like he usually did, and generally became less available. At first I thought maybe he lost interest or was busy, but slowly I realized that I had taken so much of his attention for granted. The little things he did, checking in, sharing a laugh, his calm confidence, suddenly stood out in my mind. I started replaying our past interactions in my head. I remembered how he made me feel listened to, how his presence was grounding, how his energy made the moments we shared enjoyable without me feeling I had to chase or perform. All those things I hadn't noticed or fully appreciated before now felt vivid and meaningful. This is what happens naturally when a man steps back. Absence forces reflection. Women start analyzing not just how we felt when you were around, but how your presence influenced our day-to-day emotions. We notice patterns we ignored, gestures we brushed off, and the sense of stability you provided without even trying. From a woman's perspective, when you disappear, it creates a space where we must confront our own feelings. Were we valuing you enough? Did we respect the boundaries you had set? Did we even realize how much you mattered? This mental replay is subtle, but it's powerful. It transforms the way we think about you. What was ordinary becomes extraordinary in your absence. And that shift is the first step toward emotional recalibration, where a woman begins to see you differently, appreciate you more, and often feel a deeper pull toward you. 2. The silence that sparks obsession. Here's something men rarely understand. Silence isn't emptiness, it's power. When a man disappears, women don't just notice the absence. Our minds fill the gap. We replay conversations, analyze moments, and start wondering what's going on in his life. That mental energy is intense, even if it's subtle, and it often leads to a stronger emotional attachment than anything you could achieve by constant presence. Silence communicates something words often cannot. It shows that you have a life, priorities, and boundaries. It signals that your attention isn't guaranteed, and that creates tension. the kind that keeps a woman's mind actively engaged with you. From a female perspective, obsession isn't about scarcity in a manipulative sense, it's about contrast. We experience what it feels like to have your attention freely given versus what it feels like when it's absent. That contrast makes your presence more valuable in ways we often don't consciously notice at first. The key point is this: disappearance doesn't need to be dramatic or hostile. It's simply a matter of stepping back, not responding immediately, or focusing on your own life. That calm, composed absence forces a woman to reflect, wonder, and mentally engage with you more than any text, call, or reassurance ever could. Women naturally want to understand what they're missing, and silence creates the perfect environment for that. When you give space, curiosity grows. When curiosity grows, emotional investment follows. And that emotional investment is the foundation of attraction that runs deeper than mere attention or affection. 3. Why women analyze every interaction. When you're gone. When a man disappears, even temporarily, something remarkable happens in a woman's mind. We start to analyze every interaction we had with him, replaying conversations, gestures, and moments. It's not obsessive because we're controlling. It's natural because absence forces reflection. Suddenly, your presence, or lack thereof, becomes a lens through which we examine our own feelings, decisions, and behaviors. From our perspective, men usually give attention freely, so we rarely stop to appreciate it. But the moment that attention isn't there, our brains start tracking patterns. We ask ourselves questions. Did I take him for granted? Was I too casual? Did I respond appropriately? Was there a subtle sign I missed? This isn't about guilt. It's about awareness. The emotional contrast created by your absence sharpens perception and magnifies the value of what was once ordinary. It's interesting because the intensity of this mental replay isn't proportional to how dramatic the disappearance is. Even a short period of silence can trigger significant reflection. That's because women are wired to pay attention to emotional dynamics. When a man disappears, he introduces a gap that demands evaluation. The mind doesn't like gaps left unresolved. We notice the small things you did, how calm you were, the subtle ways you showed respect, the energy you brought to interactions. Suddenly, these details stand out in ways they never did before. This reflection also brings a heightened awareness of emotional investment. Women start considering what it felt like when you were present versus when you're absent. We measure the emotional stability, confidence, and consistency you brought into our lives, and the contrast becomes clear. The absence exposes our own desire and attachment. It's the mental space where we realize not every man has this quality, and not every connection feels the same. Women also start imagining scenarios in your absence. It's not manipulation, it's curiosity and mental engagement. We picture what your life might be like, how you're handling your priorities, and how we fit or don't fit into that picture. That imagination often leads to emotional pull, a desire to reconnect, and sometimes a quiet regret if we haven't treated you with full awareness. From a man's perspective, this may look like confusion or unpredictability, but from a woman's perspective, it's natural. Absence creates an internal space for evaluation, recognition, and emotional recalibration. It allows us to see the value we may have overlooked, and it can shift our perspective in ways that no argument, gift, or attention could. In short, disappearance doesn't make us think less of a man. It often makes us think more in a focused and meaningful way. Women analyze every detail because the absence reveals what truly matters. Emotional connection, respect, and presence become sharper in our minds, and that mental engagement is where attraction deepens and desire grows. 4. Emotional contrast. How your disappearance changes. Her perspective. Let me explain something clearly. Women are wired to respond to emotional contrast. It's one of the reasons disappearance works so effectively. When a man is always present, always available, and constantly attentive, our minds get comfortable. That comfort is safe, but it also diminishes emotional intensity. Desire needs contrast, and absence creates exactly that. When you disappear, you unintentionally introduce tension, and tension sharpens perception. Women start comparing how we felt when you were around versus now. We notice the stability you provided, the calm energy, the subtle ways you influenced interactions positively. The absence makes the mind crave those experiences again. That craving often manifests as heightened attention and emotional curiosity. Contrast also reveals the value we might have overlooked. Small gestures, tone of voice, thoughtful responses, things that blended into the background when you were present, become meaningful. Absence highlights your strengths and makes us reassess what we truly appreciate about you. It creates a mental space for us to recognize not just what we miss, but why it mattered. From a woman's perspective, this isn't about fear or manipulation. It's about perspective. Emotional contrast forces reflection, and reflection often sparks emotional investment. We start paying attention to details, replaying memories, and thinking about how your presence influenced our experiences. The more emotionally grounded and consistent you were, the more noticeable the contrast becomes when you step away. This is why strategic disappearance is more powerful than constant attention. It's not about being cold or playing games. It's about creating the space that allows women to see your value clearly. The subtle tension, the emotional distance, the space for reflection. It all works together to make your presence more magnetic than ever before. Absence also clarifies priorities. Women often realize who they value and why when a man is temporarily unavailable. It forces us to confront feelings that might have been buried under routine interactions or familiarity. And that emotional recalibration can deepen desire, strengthen attraction, and in many cases, increase respect for the man who didn't overexpose himself. 5. When she realizes you won't chase. The awakening moment. Here's something that hits harder than any conversation or argument. A woman notices when a man won't chase her. Not in a mean way, not with coldness, but by simply respecting his own space and maintaining his independence. That moment, when she realizes you won't bend over backward for attention, can change everything. I remember being in this exact situation. I had been casually testing his patience, making little dismissive comments, and expecting him to respond emotionally, maybe even chase me for reassurance. But instead, he stayed steady. He didn't overreact. He didn't try to explain himself or apologize unnecessarily. He just maintained his boundaries and carried on with his life. At first, it frustrated me. I didn't understand why he wasn't responding the way other men would have. But over time, I started reflecting on my behavior. I noticed how consistent he was, how calm and self-assured, and how his presence had a quiet power that wasn't dependent on my approval. That realization, when a woman understands you won't chase her, creates a profound internal shift. It forces self-reflection. We start thinking about whether we valued your presence enough. We begin comparing you to other men who might have reacted differently, maybe more dramatically or emotionally, and we see the difference. That difference makes your stability and independence even more attractive. From our perspective, this isn't manipulation, it's emotional clarity. When a man refuses to chase, he sets a standard without words. That standard teaches a woman respect, makes her reevaluate her own behavior, and often triggers deeper emotional engagement. The mental space you create forces reflection, curiosity, and in many cases, a desire to reconnect on her terms. Women notice the men who are consistent, self-respecting, and composed under pressure. When you disappear or withdraw without drama, it's a silent statement. Your energy is yours, and your attention is earned. That awakening moment, the point where a woman realizes you won't chase, is where attraction deepens, desire grows, and emotional investment starts to shift in your favor. 6. The fine line between absence and neglect. Here's something men often get wrong. Disappearing works, but only if it's done with intention and self-respect. There's a big difference between stepping back to create space and completely neglecting a woman. Women can sense the difference immediately. Absence that's purposeful communicates value. It shows that your life has priorities, that your attention isn't freely given, and that your presence is meaningful. Neglect, on the other hand, signals disinterest or lack of care, and that kills curiosity rather than building it. From a woman's perspective, strategic absence is subtle but powerful. It creates mental space for reflection, for noticing patterns, and for understanding the emotional impact you had. Neglect creates confusion and frustration, which can lead to disconnection rather than attraction. A man who steps back intentionally does it with calmness, dignity, and focus on his own life. He doesn't disappear to punish, manipulate, or play games. He disappears to give both himself and her space to reflect. That difference matters. Women notice when a man is absent because he respects himself, and that presence of self-respect makes him far more magnetic. Absence also helps a woman understand what she values. When you're not constantly available, we begin to consider what life would feel like without your energy, presence, and stability. That reflection sharpens attraction. But if you disappear haphazardly, it breeds irritation, mistrust, or disengagement. The lesson here is simple. Your absence must be purposeful, grounded, calm. It's not about being unreachable. It's about signaling that your attention is valuable, that your time is precious, and that you won't compromise your self-worth. That subtle difference determines whether a woman reflects on your value or dismisses you entirely. 7. Lessons she learns when you respect yourself. First, here's a hard truth most men overlook. Women respect men who respect themselves first. If your actions, including disappearance, are rooted in self-respect, the lessons a woman learns are profound, and they often change how she perceives you forever. When you maintain boundaries, prioritize your life, and step back without drama, a woman notices. She realizes that your time and energy aren't up for grabs. That realization forces her to reflect on her own behavior, how she treated you, how much attention she gave, and whether she truly valued what she had. From her perspective, this is an awakening. She starts thinking more clearly about the relationship dynamic, her feelings, and the kind of man you are. The most powerful lesson isn't just about noticing absence, it's about understanding value. When a man disappears, a woman often realizes how rare it is to meet someone who doesn't chase needlessly, doesn't seek constant validation, and lives with grounded confidence. She begins to see that presence isn't automatic, and that emotional investment is something to earn, not assume. This reflection can be uncomfortable. A woman might feel regret, curiosity, or even a sense of loss. That discomfort is natural, and it's what drives deeper emotional engagement. She begins to pay attention to the little details she once overlooked. The calmness you bring, the consistency in your energy, and the way you treat her with respect without overcompensating. From a man's perspective, this isn't about punishment or games. It's about being steady, grounded, and self-directed. Women learn that respect cannot be demanded. It is earned through consistency, emotional independence, and self-awareness. When you disappear strategically, the lessons she takes away are lasting. She notices your value, understands the importance of boundaries, and in many cases, feels a stronger pull toward you than ever before. Respect yourself first. That simple principle teaches more than words ever could and ensures that every action, including absence, strengthens attraction and shifts perspective. Here's the unfiltered truth. When you disappear, women notice more than you realize. It's not about playing games or being cruel. It's about creating space that forces reflection, emotional recalibration, and deeper awareness of your value. Many men think attention equals attraction. It doesn't. Obsession comes from emotional contrast, from curiosity, and from realizing that your presence isn't guaranteed. When you respect yourself first and step back strategically, a woman begins to see the little things that matter, the calm confidence you carry, the stability you provide, and the subtle ways your energy impacts her life. That's when attraction grows, desire strengthens, and emotional investment shifts in your favor. Think about your own behavior. Are you constantly available, always over-explaining, or giving attention freely without boundaries? If so, women often take it for granted. But when you create absence with purpose, it forces awareness. It teaches respect without words, and that lesson sticks. I want you to share your experiences in the comments. Have you ever noticed a woman reflecting on her feelings when you pulled back? Or have you been the man who gave too much and didn't see the effect? I read and engage with your comments because real conversation is how we learn and grow. Remember this: a man who respects himself, values his time, and disappears with intention isn't being distant. He's teaching a woman what real attraction feels like. That's the silent power you hold, and it's far stronger than any chase, argument, or demonstration of affection could ever be.